Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, RegisKillbin is the name, and Hearthstone is the game, and these are the 10 best cards from the Year of the Kraken. Now, the Year of the Kraken, if you're not familiar with that term, is essentially the standard format rotation that started with Whispers of the Old Gods and is about to end with the release of Journey to Unguro. So these 10 cards are the cards I think are the best cards from the expansions or adventures that were within the Year of the Kraken. In other words, Whispers of the Old Gods, Karazhan, and Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. So these 10 cards will all come from those expansions. These aren't necessarily the 10 best cards within the Year of the Kraken, which could include previous sets and classic cards and so on and so forth. These cards specifically had to be from those sets. So let's go ahead and jump into the list. Starting off at number 10, it is the 4-mana 7/7 Flame Wreath Faceless. This guy defined mid-range Shaman for a very, very long time and really became one of the biggest memes in Hearthstone as a card that people love to hate because it was just so frustrating to get such a huge body on the board, basically on turn 3 or turn 4. And since that deck archetype was so prevalent across the ladder, Flame Wreath Faceless for a long time represented the worst and most powerful things in Hearthstone. Moving on to the number 9 spot, it is N'Zoth the Corruptor, another Whispers of the Old Gods card. Now, it might seem silly to have an old god, one of the strongest, most crazy things in the World of Warcraft universe, at the number 9 spot, but I think that's as far as you can put N'Zoth on this list, simply because even though it's a powerful card with one of the best effects in the game, it hasn't ever really been a part of a meta-defining deck. It's been in some very good decks, but never really that tier 1 deck that was dominating the meta. So this is a good card that has made up a lot of tier 2, tier 3 style decks that will continue to be good as long as it's in standard format, and in fact looks like it might start to shine even more with Journey to Unguro, but for now I don't think this card can creep any higher than the number 9 spot. Up next at the number 8 spot is a card people probably don't think about as being one of the best cards from the Year of the Kraken, but to me it certainly is. This is Bloodsale Cultist. It's a 3-mana 3/4 pirate with this just absurd battle cry that gives your weapon both an extra attack and an extra durability. And anybody who has played Pirate Warrior, which is currently one of the best decks ever, I would argue, will see this card and learn to hate it very, very quickly just because the stats are so good for a 3-drop and the effect is absurd. And of course, it activates so many different kinds of pirate synergies itself that this card is powerful. And as long as pirates are an option for Warrior, this card is going to be a part of that set. Moving on to the number 7 spot, it's Fandral Staghelm. Now, this guy has been a little quiet recently in the meta, but don't forget that this guy was everywhere for a long time in Druid because Druid had so many different kinds of spell synergy decks out there, and Fandral Staghelm worked so well with all of those cards. He's not quite as big in the Jade package that has been popular for Druid lately, but he's still an incredibly dominant legendary, and he has defined much of the Year of the Kraken, so you have to toss this guy a bone when you're talking about cards from these sets. At the number 6 spot is a card I think might actually be one of the best cards from Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. This is Jade Lightning. In my opinion, this card is actually downright broken. 4 damage for 4 mana isn't terrible because it can both clear minions and hit the opponent's face, but when it also summons a body like this, it can just be absurd. It becomes essentially a really cheap Firelands Portal, which is a 7-mana card, but the upside is even higher because Jade Golems that it summons can be 7/7s, 8/8, so on and so forth. And Jade Shaman has become a popular and important part of the meta, and that is because Jade Lightning is such a good card in a variety of different ways. It even works in aggressive decks that run a small number of Jade cards like Jade Claws and Jade Lightning because this card is so good. Almost regardless what the deck is trying to do, Jade Lightning is good enough to make the cut. Speaking of overpowered Shaman cards, I have another one here at the number 5 spot. This is the Maelstrom Portal, a 2-mana spell. This one is such an efficient board clear, in particular when it's combined with all of the spell damage effects available to Shaman, most notably their hero power, but also cards like Bloodmage Thalnos and Azure Drake. Maelstrom Portal becomes completely ridiculous in how efficient it can be. It's a better consecration that happens to summon you a minion as well, and you'll notice a theme between this card and the previous one. Cards that both address your opponent's side of the board while developing a minion are really, really good, and Shaman has access to a couple absolutely overpowered ones. Jade Golems are certainly one of the most influential aspects of the Mean Streets of Gadgetzan expansion, and a lot of that comes back to their legendary Aya Blackpaw, who is my number 4 card. For a 6-mana card, there's just a lot of value packed into this legendary. It might only be a 5/3 to begin with, but since it summons 2 Jade Golems, the upside and the total stats that this card provides can be absurd. Not to mention it just creates a lot of friction and frustration for your opponents. So of course Aya Blackpaw has been included in virtually every Jade Golem deck because she just packs such a powerful punch. So now it's time for the top 3, starting off with one of the cards I hate the most in this game. It is the Draconid Operative. This card is so darn good that even Blizzard, I think, has admitted that sometimes they just have to print really overpowered cards to make up for a class who is currently lacking in the meta. So classes that are having trouble building good decks occasionally print them a ridiculous card and suddenly they're going to be viable. And that's exactly what has happened with the Draconid Operative. Dragon Priest was a kind of lingering tier 3 deck that needed a boost, and this card provided it single-handedly. It's just too good. 5 mana 5/6 is a fantastic stat allocation, and this battle cry is crazy. You get to discover a card from your opponent's deck, so sometimes that means you get the perfect Archmage Antonidas or the perfect Leroy to kill them. So it's the fact that you get to choose and you have control, and this body is wonderful anyway. It's probably the best card draw card in the game since it's also a card generation card. It synergizes with dragons itself. Unfortunately, it seems like dragons are going to be leaving the meta very, very soon with Journey to Ungoro and the standard rotation and a lot of the dragons from Blackrock Mountain. But that doesn't mean this card hasn't still had a major impact on the game in its short duration in the standard format meta. So as long as there are some dragons lingering around, I have a feeling Draconid Operative might just be powerful enough all on its own that if you can enable it in any way, Dragon Priest could still be a thing. Up next at the number 2 spot is Zacchaeus. This is an archetype-defining card. Alongside Reno Jackson, Zacchaeus empowers the no-duplicate style of deck, and with Reno Jackson rotating out very soon, Zacchaeus is going to be the lone standard format card along with a few specific class legendaries that do support that archetype. And some people, I think, underrate Zacchaeus. I think he's just as good as Reno in many ways, and in some matchups, even more important than Reno, particularly in control environments. So Zacchaeus is undeniably a powerful card, another one of the tri-class legendaries like Aya Blackpaw that has defined the Mean Streets of Gadgetzan era, and I think will continue to have a major impact on Hearthstone for as long as he is in standard format. And then there was one, I know I'm going to get some hate for this pick, I completely understand that, but hear me out. Patches of the Pirate to me is actually the best card from Year of the Kraken, and there's a reason for that. It's because no other card in the game has ever completely redefined the meta the way Patches the Pirate, and in particular in combination with Small Time Buccaneer pre-nerf, did when Mean Streets of Gadgetzan hit. This card launched an entirely new style of Hearthstone. We'd had aggro decks in the past, but the latter was never flooded with hyper-aggression quite like that which Patches the Pirate enabled and encouraged. This card is just a 1-mana 1/1. It seems like it'd be hard to call something like that the best card from an entire year's worth of expansions, but because of his effect and the fact that he's summoned for free and is instantly impactful on the board and has made so many decks so powerful and so reliable and so good in the early game, to me, Patches the Pirate, despite the small stats, despite how much everybody loves to hate this card, is actually, in some ridiculous way or another, the best card from the Year of the Kraken. So there you have it. That's my list. Those are the 10 best cards from Whispers of the Old Gods, One Night in Karazhan, and Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. Now, I'm sure a lot of people out there are going to disagree with my list. That's all right. I get it. We all have our own opinions. I'd love to hear yours, though, so share your take on this list in the comments below. What are your top 10 cards? I can't wait to read all that fun stuff. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, game on.